We all know how powerful video is on Facebook and Instagram for communicating your message and engaging your audiences. But often we find ourselves needing to create a video with limited or even no freshly filmed video content to hand. That's where an often overlooked resource can be very handy. Archive. Hi, I'm Dean Arnett, and in this film we're going to look at how useful Archive can be in your films, how best to manage it, and why you may be missing a big trick by not using it properly. But before we crack on, I have tutorials and videos coming out all the time, so please click subscribe on my YouTube channel and follow me on my social media channels. That's Dean Arnett on Instagram and Dean Arnett Video School on Facebook. Right, let's crack on.
Today's news is tomorrow's archive. Here at ITN, we make the distinction that after 24 hours, it becomes archive.
I would say archive is one of the most underused kinds of content. And I think the reason is because people have this idea that, social media platforms, it's all going to be new and shiny. And if you're using something that's been done before or archived, whether that's 1 year ago or 10 years ago, it's almost like, you're scraping the barrel, you run out of ideas. Well, actually, I think archive something the audience likes, it makes sense. And if you're an organization that has an archive, that's a huge competitive advantage. So if you're not making use of that archive, you're wasting a huge opportunity.
The trick to good storytelling is multifaceted, but one of the key things is context. This is what Archive can bring to your story: background, historical perspective, and context.
The key term with archive is relevancy. So is this relevant to what's happening now? So either is it a story that people will still engage with, but also can it add some kind of context to a big story, maybe a conflict that's happening now? And can it show you that perhaps things have happened before and we can understand them in a different way?
Archive is about joining the dots. It's about, instead of seeing things as isolated incidents, understanding where they sit within a wider historical context. So, for example, we recently had the Queen's Jubilee, and the pictures that travelled all around the world were of Prince Louis, pulling funny faces on the balcony. But what was particularly special about those shots was that he was wearing a little sailor outfit, which identically mirrored a sailor outfit that his father, Prince William, had worn at a similar age on exactly the same balcony. So by being able to go back into the archive and show both of those shots together, we give added context, we give added background.
As always, any publisher should know and understand who their audience is, so that they can speak to them directly and effectively and in their voice. But generally speaking, with video, a Facebook audience is more likely to engage with an emotionally driven narrative, whereas an Instagram audience is more likely to be driven by theme and subject.
When you're posting on social media, what do you want? Do you want engagement? You want to create emotion? Well, just because something's happened in the past doesn't mean it can't do that job. For instance, you might have a real magic moment from a sporting event. Well, people can just relive that, enjoy that great goal one more time. It doesn't mean because it happened in the past, it doesn't have any value.
The archive is a way of shortcutting to get to the best of yesterday's news footage. This is not the dross. This is not the stuff that's been discarded. This is the best of yesteryear.
When we talk about archive, this can describe many types of resources: text, photographs, film and video. But the moving image archive can also be broken down into categories too. Archive can include old library film or news footage, usually found at specialist online archive sites or news agency libraries. This can often be very expensive though, and don't think that just because footage is published online already, it's free to use. Someone still owns that copyright, and using video without permission could land you in trouble, or at least with a very big bill. But there are other options. Some libraries, such as Pond 5, specialise in public domain or royalty-free footage that is no longer in copyright and is therefore legally free to use.
Like everything, you have to be careful with rights, and this is again a challenge that people have. They have archive and you think, do we have the rights to use this? This again hasn't been labelled properly, they don't know. But be careful, you can't just grab anything anywhere and put it up there. If you don't have the rights, then just like any other piece of content, you have to be very careful.
Archive can be expensive. but it's probably not as expensive as you think, especially if you're a smaller digital-only creator. Don't be put off by the fact that most of the greatest archive is managed by archive libraries. They're all really keen to expand their digital offering, and most of them will have two very different pricing structures for broadcasters and for digital. And especially if you're thinking of using a lot of archive and making that part of your strategy going forward, go talk to them. They'll be really keen to speak to you.
Archive can include material held in StockShots libraries. This is usually generic material which has no historical relevance, but can be used very effectively to visualize stories. However, search carefully and you may well find historical or news relevant footage hidden away in certain StockShot sites, and this can often be very much cheaper than specialist or historical agency derived footage.
If you're looking to buy archive, the first question that you're going to be asked is what type of material it is that you're looking for. Is it creative or is it editorial? Broadly speaking, creative is when something is rights free. Once you've bought it, it's yours and you can use it as you want in whatever context you want, and you can use it in multiple projects. If you're buying editorial material, then there are often slightly tighter restrictions about what you can use and how you can use it. For example, some news footage you can't use in a satirical manner because that would be against the spirit of what it was shot for.
But so many organisations fail to realise the enormous resource that they are contributing each day as they shoot and produce video. Often footage from a shoot is forgotten, or in some cases even wiped once the final film has been created. Forward-thinking organisations use their raw material once the main edit is finished to create their own internal library footage. This means footage can be used again and again, reduce future shooting time, and speed up post-production.
Anyone who's producing content is cumulatively building up their own archive. It's about being able to flex that archive. And it absolutely has a positive monetary value. It has a value to you in that you can reuse your assets without having to go out and shoot new material all the time. And it also has a value if you're able to sell it on.
Obviously, archive that hasn't been tagged properly and labelled properly isn't as valuable as archive that has. And obviously with developments and things like AI and facial recognition and everything, that should become easier over time. But it's really important to get the workflow right, because another reason that people don't use archive enough is because they say, you know what, I've got to go down, I've got to get this off a tape and transfer it. And the process takes too long, so they just don't bother. So one of the keys to this is also making the archive as smooth as possible, and anything that you are archiving now, just take that little bit of extra time to label it properly.
Using archive is not a negative, a choice of last resort. Used properly, it can enhance and make your video.
The idea of archive being a last resort is laughable. I mean, have you ever seen any archive? Archive can be so emotional, it can be so emotive.
One of the things that surprises people when they look at platforms like Facebook and Instagram is that repeated studies show that nostalgia is one of the things people like to see and like to engage with. And if we can get rid of this prejudice against archive, that it's old, it's boring, we've heard this story before, we don't want to hear it again. There are fantastic stories, things that often people don't know about that you can bring back.
Archive is a way of shortcutting to the emotional heart of a story. By using images from yesteryear, it takes us back to where we were when they happened, or even if we weren't alive at the time, what we imagine the past might have been. And that's always got an emotional charge. And that nostalgia is a way to shortcut and to get to the heart of a story and to produce emotion out of pictures that take us back to a different era and a different place and a different time.
And of course, today's post-production tools, as well as Facebook and Instagram's own built-in creative tools, have a wealth of facilities available to make footage look fresh, new, and much more engaging and interactive for audiences.
Let's say you're talking stories on Instagram. You know, we know that we want to make it interactive. So again, you could do anything. You could turn it into a quiz, can you name this person? And then they go to the next story and you answer that question. Use all the interactivity tools because just because something's archived doesn't mean we just have to play it out again. So always with archive, see it as something almost like the catalyst, the spark.
And it can be incredibly rewarding. When you find those magic moments, it really makes it all worthwhile.
Archive as well as setting up and running your own internal stock shots library, can transform your videos and add a visual and editorial depth to your storytelling you just may be missing out on.